I recently made a pretty bold claim. Somebody left a comment on one of my recent videos and they recommended to just turn off Dirac Live, that just completely abandon it. And I commented, I replied, and then we got into it. We didn't get in an argument, but we were just kind of going back and forth. And at one point, I made the claim. I said that Dirac Live makes such a difference that in a blind A/B test, I would be able to distinguish Dirac Live versus no Dirac Live with 100% accuracy. That's what I claimed. I claimed that I could tell 100% of the time whether Dirac Live was enabled or not. And after I made that claim, I got to thinking about it. I'm like, that's actually that's a pretty bold claim. Like that's pretty definitive. And if I'm going to be making that claim, maybe I should actually test it and actually prove that I can back up that claim. So what I did was I devised a kind of experiment, a small experiment, but a way to test this. And so I did it. And now I'm here to share with you the results. The results. Can I back up my claim that I can spot Dirac Live? I can hear it with 100% accuracy. So this is how I tested it. What I did is up in my tiny theater, I have an Onkyo TX-RZ50, and it has Dirac Live on it, and I have calibrated that theater using Dirac Live. Now, in the Onkyo app, there is a function that makes it super easy to switch between different profiles for sound correction. So I have my Dirac Live configured for the slot number 1, but it also gives you the option to just turn all of them off, like to just go back to just like the default sound settings. And it's super easy to switch back and forth from the phone app. You can turn it off or you can use the Dirac Live. So what I did was I decided to listen to 4 songs and watch 3 clips from movies. And what I did was I sat in the main listening position, and then my wife sat off to the side so she wouldn't interfere with the sound at all. And I started the song, and then she would switch back and forth for the music. For the music samples, I would be listening to the song, and then I would tell her, I'm like, okay, switch it. And so then she would switch to, I didn't know which one she was switching. I didn't know which was which. But she would switch to one thing, and then I'd listen for a little bit, and then I'd say, okay, switch it back to the other. It's kind of like at the eye doctor, when they give you 2 different lenses, and they're like, okay, which one looks better, A or B? A or B? And then you're like, let's show me B again. Switch back to A. It was kind of like that. And then eventually, after I did that enough, I determined which one I liked better. So I wasn't necessarily trying to decide which one was Dirac Live and which one wasn't. It was more, which one do I prefer? Which obviously, I hope that Dirac Live sounds better to me. Like I hope that I've calibrated the system to the point where Dirac Live sounds better. So after I went back and forth, switching back and forth between the 2 profiles, I would then tell her, okay, she would have one playing, and once I got to the one that I was like, okay, this is the one that I like better, I would tell her, I'm like, okay, whichever one this is on right now, this is the one I prefer. And then she wrote down which one, whether I preferred it was Dirac or if I preferred it being off. And so we did that for the 4 songs. And then I watched 3 clips of movies. And with these, because the movies, the sound is constantly changing, at least with songs, it's kind of repetitive. And so you can listen to one thing for a few seconds and then switch to the other one and get the same sound. With movies, it's always changing. And so what I did is I watched the clip all the way through with one, and then I went back and rewatched it again. And then she switched it to the other profile, and I just didn't know which was which. And then after watching both of them, I said, okay, I prefer the first one, I prefer the second one. And then she wrote it down. So how did I do? Did I meet my claim that I could, with 100% accuracy, spot the difference? I'm just going to cut right to the spoiler at the end, and the answer is no. I did not. I am not able to make that claim that I can spot Dirac Live with 100% accuracy. But that's not actually the most important thing that I learned during this process. There were some very interesting things that I observed and heard as I was switching between the profiles blindly, not knowing which was which. So let me just tell you real quick which songs I listened to. I listened to Please Don't Go Home Yet by Steven Sanchez, Circles Around This Town by Maren Morris, Show Me Love by Alicia Keys, The Lighthouse Keeper by Sam Smith. How did I do on those? Well, the very first one, Please Don't Go Home Yet, that one I selected off as the one that I preferred. But the next three, I chose Dirac Live as the one that I preferred. Now, here's what's interesting. On the very first song, as she switched back and forth between the profiles, I was struggling to hear a difference. It really was a coin flip. I could not hear. I mean, it was slight. It was slight. The vocals were a little bit airy in one, and I kind of preferred that a little bit more. But I mean, the difference in sound was so slight. It was almost a coin flip. The other three, it was unmistakable. She would switch. It only took a couple times switching back and forth. And all three of those songs, I was like, clearly, this is the one I prefer. This is the one that I like better. There was a big difference in the sound. I heard a significant difference, and it was very obvious which one I preferred. And in all three of those cases, it was Dirac Live that I preferred. It was only in that first song that I struggled to hear a difference. And here's my theory as to why. That song, Please Don't Go Home Yet, is mostly vocals and instrumentals with almost no bass. There are very few, if any, low frequencies in that song. And the way I have Dirac Live calibrated is that I am not doing any sound correction, no frequency correction above 500 hertz. So anything above 500 hertz, Dirac Live is not touching it. It's only correcting below that. And in addition to that, because I like bass, not a ton of bass, but I do like a little more bass, I have adjusted the target curve for frequencies below 100 hertz. And so those are boosted up, and I'm able to hear that, right? And so in that first song, there just weren't very many frequencies below that 500 hertz. And what few there were, my ear it was a coin flip on which one I preferred. But the other three, a lot of bass, a lot of frequencies across the entire spectrum. And with those, the difference was unmistakable, and I very much preferred. It was no contest, no hesitation. I preferred the Dirac Live sound correction. Now, how did I do on the movies? The movies, this was also interesting. So it was a clip from Deepwater Horizon, right after the big explosion, and Mark Wahlberg character is climbing out from underneath the rubble. The opening scene of Baby Driver with the song during the bank heist, and then the Batman, where the Batmobile makes its first appearance. Those were the three scenes. Now, how did I do on those? For Deepwater Horizon, I selected Dirac Live as the one that I preferred. In the other two clips, I selected off, no Dirac Live. But again, on all three clips, I struggled to hear the difference. The differences were so subtle that it really didn't push me one way or the other as far as preference, like which one sounds better. They were so close that there just wasn't enough there for me to make a definitive decision. And so it really came down to a coin flip. And I suspect that if I had done a fourth movie clip, it probably would have been split 50-50. Half with Dirac, half with off, just because it just came down to a coin flip. So what's my takeaway from all this? Well, my takeaway from all this is a few things. One, if you have preferences for low frequencies, you want to boost that bass, Dirac Live is a great way to do that, because after you do the sound calibration, you can boost that target curve. I've talked about this in a previous video where you can boost those lower frequencies so you can get more bass down low. That's the first thing. The second thing is that Sound correction, Dirac Live, it's a room correction software, right? It is correcting for problems with your room, whether it be poor speaker placement, and so it has to adjust delays. Like you might have a large delay on one speaker because it's closer to you and another speaker is further away, and so it has to delay that first speaker. That's one thing. So setting those distances. But if you set your room up correctly, then it really doesn't have to do much. And then the second thing is with sound correction, frequency correction. If you're not getting massive peaks or nulls on certain frequencies, then room correction software like Dirac Live doesn't have to work very hard. It's like, hey, everything looks pretty uniform. Everything looks pretty responsive across the board. Maybe a little tweak here, a little tweak there, but your room is actually pretty good. So in my tiny theater, I laid it out very well. When it comes to speaker placement, it's almost perfect. It's almost perfect with my height speakers, my sides, my surrounds, my mains, my center. I mean, the main listening position is almost like directly right in the middle of everything. And so when it comes to delays, time alignment, that sort of thing, the speakers are almost perfect. And so Dirac Live doesn't have to do much to correct for that. And I've looked at the delays on the settings to see what it's done, and it's made almost no adjustments because everything is already set up really well. Where Dirac Live is really going to make a significant difference is if in your room your speakers are placed less uniform, less correctly. So like I mentioned, if you have to have some speakers that are further away from you and some closer, Dirac Live can correct for that. And so in those instances, I suspect that you would hear a much bigger difference between what Dirac Live is doing. It should sound better versus no correction at all, because with your speakers being kind of placed in wonky places and it widely varying distances from the main listening position, without correcting for that, it's going to sound off. And so I just don't have that in my tiny theater because everything is laid out really well to begin with. The second thing is the frequency response. My room, it's not fully treated, but I do have absorption panels to minimize reflections on the first reflection points on the walls and the ceiling. I also have 2 large chairs in the middle of the room. And so there's not a lot of reflections, a lot of echoes. Like the room is actually pretty quiet with that regard. And so as far as getting like weird peaks and nulls on the frequency responses, it doesn't really have to work that hard. Like the sound is already quite good. And I have RBH speakers all the way around, and those RBH speakers are phenomenal. The frequency response on those is just beautiful. And so I basically what I'm saying is I designed the room really well. And so Dirac Live doesn't have to do a lot to correct for what little bit needs to be correcting. And so I suspect, and maybe I'll try this, but I'd have to find a room that's laid out poorly and is not using great speakers. It would be interesting to do this same test in a room where Dirac Live has a lot of heavy lifting to do, because there's just a lot of stuff that it has to correct. Because in my current room, in my tiny theater, with no room correction, it already sounds really, really good. But again, as I mentioned earlier, that bass extension, boosting that bass, that is something that I definitely prefer. I prefer that sound. Now, one could argue that you can do that without running Dirac Live. That's true. You can set the adjustments on your subwoofer levels. You can boost those without running Dirac Live. But Dirac Live does give you a target curve that you can adjust and you can kind of tweak to your preference, where it's not just uniformly boosting the subwoofer. It's kind of sloping off. You can set where the slope is, etc. So there's a lot there, and this was very interesting to me. And also, I can no longer make the claim that I can identify Dirac Live with 100% accuracy. So I will no longer be making that claim, though I only did it once. But I won't do that again in the future. But this was very interesting, and hopefully it was interesting to you. And thanks for watching.